everywhere. Mellow TV, 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 everywhere.
When selecting ATSC 3.0 for the digital switchover across the nation. ATSC 3.0 has great potential to be a foundation upon which strong businesses can be built that deliver high-value services to people and businesses alike. The system is the state of the art in the world. It holds the position as the most efficient digital terrestrial data transmission system, bar none. The work you are doing and continue to do to develop, deploy, and promote ATSC 3.0 shows your commitment to your own future successes. Jamaica is joining South Korea and the US, now offering commercial ATSC 3.0 services. And in fact, you can see them on 3 televisions in this room coming direct over the air on 3 different devices, no less. I encourage all of you to look at the exhibits and enjoy speaking with those that are here to share their knowledge with you. South Korea began services in 2017 and now reaches people in every major city in the nation, over 75% of their population. And in the US, we are now reaching over 50% of households with ATSC 3.0 services. And I'm happy to say that the first station in my hometown of Boston finally came online on Friday. All right. US broadcasters expect to achieve 82% coverage by the end of this year. Brazil has selected key ATSC 3.0 technologies for their next-gen transition, including the IP-based route dash system, the advanced emergency messaging system, and the same technology for captions and audio. They actually selected the latest video codec, and ATSC is busy adding that to the ATSC 3.0 standard. Brazil will make their physical layer decisions in early 2024, and you'll hear more about this on the global deployment panel later on in the program. There's keen interest in ATSC 3.0 coming from India. India is now in the process of transposing ATSC 3.0 standards into Indian standards, which paves the way for them to adopt ATSC 3.0 should they choose to do so. Canada, Mexico, Central America, and more Caribbean nations, some of whom are represented here today, are also exploring ATSC 3.0 for their people. Welcome to our colleagues from Belize and Trinidad and Tobago. The worldwide broadcast infrastructure is a critical resource. It's anchored by high-power, high-tower transmitters and supplemented by denser cells broadcasting data and media services, which is an optimal method for delivering digital data. This IP-based system takes full advantage of that because broadcast is the most spectrum-efficient and sustainable way to fulfill the myriad and growing use cases for delivering the same data to a multitude of receive devices. Large transmitters have traditionally been associated with television services, and with the earlier rise of pay TV like cable and the more recent rise of streaming services, some have begun to question the value of the broadcast infrastructure. But I am here to say that the broadcast infrastructure plays a critical role in a heterogeneous data delivery ecosystem. By moving one-to-many data delivery sessions from a unicast network, such as the cellular network, to a broadcast network, we not only save spectrum, but we also save energy for the future of our planet. We have found that each nation brings its own unique needs and goals for a next-generation broadcasting system. And indeed, it's not just about television anymore in some places. In the US and Canada, there is growing interest in datacasting. Since this is an IP-based system, we can deliver any kind of data we want to any kind of device. This could be map updates to cars, software updates in an Industry 4.0 environment, redundant GPS data for drones, or whatever's needed. In Brazil and South Korea, better television is the primary goal, with South Korea now actively also developing the automotive vertical. And all countries have shown strong interest in serving their people with advanced emergency messaging and distance education solutions. And I'd like to highlight one aspect of India. In India, direct-to-mobile broadcasting is a key driver of their interest in ATSC 3.0, together with offloading one-to-many data traffic from the cellular network to the broadcast network. I think it's important to point out that in India, there are 1.2 billion cell phones. And most people use cell phones to consume video content. They happen to be cricket fans, which I think was mentioned earlier. So you can imagine what happens to their cellular network during the India Premier League playoffs. If that video traffic could be routed over the broadcast network to cell phones, all in a fashion that is seamless to the viewer, the cellular network can be free to handle the two-way traffic that it is built for. And as the primary source of emergency messages, the public broadcaster in India has a very real need to reach people on the devices they're looking at, which is their phones, with this critical information. So in India, their major use case is direct to mobile. ATSC is here to do all we can to ensure that the world understands what the ATSC 3.0 system is, how it works, and how it can apply to each nation's unique use cases. And ATSC members, which includes our first Jamaican member, Television Jamaica, stands ready to embark on any new work that accommodates new use cases that are emerging in the world. So we're here at Ocean Coral Spring to welcome you to the ATSC community. And I hope that you find the ATSC community to be a group of friendly, open people who are eager to share their knowledge and experiences for the betterment of all. But as a member of this community, you have a responsibility as well. This exchange of information is a two-way street. We are also here to learn from you. And we hope that the contacts you make here at this event will become lasting, fruitful friendships and relationships among colleagues. We are excited to add your insights and your aspirations to the growing library of knowledge that this community shares. I hope you're already experiencing this exchange of information. So first of all, please join me in thanking Gary Scrignoli for his tremendous knowledge of the ATSC 3.0 system with you for the past day and a half. Thank you, Gary. And let me just say, I hope you all took notes. Because yes, there is a test at the end, and that test is graded on how you envision your success with ATSC 3.0 and how you realize that vision with your own creativity, skills, and efforts. I encourage you all to think about that. Define for yourself what Next-Gen TV means to you, and use this opportunity of these days to gain the skills and relationships that will help you get there. So thank you all for being here. And now I'd like to introduce you to, I'd like to bring Raymond back on the stage to introduce you to our next speaker. So thank you very much for listening to me while you're having your dessert, and we'll see you soon at the podium. Thank you.
So the next person I'd like to introduce is a gentleman by the name of Mr. Cordell Green. He is the Executive Director of the Broadcasting Commission of Jamaica and the Chairman of the Regulatory DSO, Chairman, Regulatory and Technical Committee for the DSO. I just found out this morning that we both attended University of the West Indies around the same time, and we're part of the same almost fraternity. Lived on Chancellor Hall. So not only are we actually coming in and making new connections, but making new friends. And it's my pleasure to introduce Cordell to the stage. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Raymond. There's a Jamaican everywhere. And it was so great when I presented at the to the ATSC PT6 work group, I believe, and to the directors of the ATSC. And at the end of the presentation, they made their various comments, you know, complimenting Jamaica. And this was being done virtually. So, you know, I wasn't there and I wasn't seeing everybody. And then I heard someone in the ATSC group come on and say, well, yeah, the Dan. And that was Raymond. It was fantastic. So I want to join Madeline in congratulating Gary for a fantastic day and a half. We have gotten rave reviews, and we're very happy that you made it to Jamaica. I can't acknowledge all the truly fantastic people who are gathered in this room, but I want to say we have some fantastic television leaders with us today who are second to none in the world. I want to acknowledge the head of the Gleaner RGR group, which is responsible for TVJ, Gary Allen, and his team who are here, and as you heard, help to bolt forward in this foray. I particularly acknowledge as well the chairman of Television Jamaica, Dr. Lawrence Nicholson. And then we have some other fantastic television people representing CVM and Love TV, the inimitable David Casanova and the great Christopher Daring. I see the chairman of the Jamaica Community Cable Association, Anthony Graham. And I want to say to those who are visiting from abroad, these people, like the average Jamaican, are prototypes of human system interaction. They make things happen. And it is not by accident. We had a lot of debate. We may still have some disagreements, but Jamaicans, we have a global cultural footprint which bears no relation to our size and economic ranking in the world. It is not by accident that that has happened. We have given to the world 8 genres and more of music. We have given to the world our religion, Rastafari. We have given to the United States of America a Secretary General, a Vice President, ganja, gun, posse, everything. We're everywhere, we do everything. So it is not by accident that we are the first country in the world to take on this challenge of leaping from analog directly to ATSC 3.0. I am confident that the people we are dealing with in terms of their intellect and fortitude, that they're capable of delivering, and I want to thank them for this incredible journey. And then in conclusion, there is a young lady here who would not get mentioned. She isn't going to ask to come up to speak to anybody, but is a powerhouse working in the background. Nora Lewis Bell, a person behind the scenes. Thank you, Nora, for your incredible work. I want to, there she is, thanks. Yes, you ought to have taken a photo and not put it on Instagram, but on CVM Love or TVJ, ATSC style. And thanks to the Broadcasting Commission team. Great working with you, Madeline, Amy, Carmen, Raymond, and Maria. And I look forward to today and tomorrow. See you at dinner tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Cordell. The next person I'd like to call to the stage really requires no introduction. Dr. Maria Myers Hamilton is the Managing Director of the Spectrum Management Authority of Jamaica and has been a powerhouse and a thought leader in everything that we've done leading up to this event. And I'd like to have her come up and speak to you now. Dr. Hamilton.
Okay. Good afternoon, all. After Cordell, what can I say? But to say you miss Bolt, and we're in his town, because Jamaica is the fastest and always will be the first to adopt. And again, I really want to say I am so pleased, because when we started this journey and we spoke to Madeline in January at the CES show, and she said to me, "What can we do?" I said, "Workshop." You need to come to Jamaica. And then when we went to Detroit, we said, I said, everybody needs to come to Jamaica. We're the best test site for this standard. And, just seeing the faces in the room and to see the belief in us, the regulators, the journey was long, but we are here now. And I believe we're future-proofing for generations to come. So every one of you in this room, you're creating history right now as we sit down. And not to mention, everybody has bought in. Signals have been turned on across all the broadcasters right now. And that's a big thing. That's a very big thing. I think commendable. So the road is not going to be easy. It's not an easy road. Who know that song? Of course, Buja. I know you know Bob Marley, but Bush is also one of them up there. It's not an easy road, but we shall have many bridges to cross, right? Who is that again? But we're going to do it. And we're going to get there, and we're going to demonstrate to the world that we are a people to be reckoned with. Thank you all, and I'm so proud to be standing in front of all of you.
So that concludes the opening remarks. I'd like to invite Madeline back to the stage. If you're following along on your program, she's going to talk to us about ATSC 3.0 and it's going to give an overview. Madeline?
Thank you, Raymond. Thank you, Cordell. Thank you, Maria, for those inspiring words. So what I'm going to do now is take you through a quick overview of ATSC 3.0. I think that after your experience with Gary, this is going to be flying at 10,000 feet, whereas with Gary, you were well down into the weeds and the grass and the stones of the details. But the idea behind this short presentation is to kind of level set and prepare you all for all of the presentations that are to come in this seminar this week. So, okay, great. It looks like the slides are up. And you all can hear me okay? Yes? Good? All right. Here we go. So there's going to be a number of slides. I love that Cordell's cadence is very measured and clear. I am a Bostonian and I talk like this. But we'll see if we can keep it at the right pace. So here we go. What is ATSC? ATSC is a standards development organization. We will be 40 years old next year. Woohoo! Celebration in Washington, D.C. You all are invited. We are an open and due process organization, and actually that number 150 is really old. We have 170 plus members right now, and it's important to point out that our members hail from all up and down the broadcast ecosystem, as you see in this room today. People who make consumer devices, people who make encoders, people who make transmitters, and everything in between are here represented today. And our mission statement is that we create and foster implementation of voluntary standards and recommended practices to advance digital terrestrial broadcasting and to facilitate interoperability. The members of ATSC are the stewards of this standard. What they do is extremely important, and it is what the future of this standard is going to become is determined by our members. So what's a standards development organization? I think you guys know this, but just in case, very quickly, we create documentation that enables industry to move forward by reducing fragmentation and to make sure things can interoperate. Here is an example of a wonderful standard. Batteries, flashlights, they just work. Here is an example of something that could use a standard. Right. We need a standard. So the idea is that we're simply trying to create a technology, and the most important thing is that this technology is designed by consensus. All of the members of ATSC come together to reach consensus on the best technical design that we will all agree to use together so that your broadcasts will work on the receivers and all the devices in between will interoperate. So that is the idea that we're about, and that is why we're consensus driven, and that is why it's important to have the best and brightest engineers from all over the world and all over the ecosystem to make sure that everybody's needs are represented. So what's ATSC 3.0 about? It's funny, I have a slide in here about how old ATSC 1.0 is, but y'all are going from analog, so I skipped that one. So the idea behind 3.0 is we definitely want to add value to the broadcasting platform with new business models and also to address the changing consumer behavior. Cordell and I were just having a discussion about that, what the content means, what the new devices mean to the young people. And I think the other important thing is that it's not just about television anymore. We're here largely talking about television, but as I mentioned in my opening remarks, there are countries for whom the television piece is actually not the most important one. So we have a standard that can do a wide variety of things and open up new business verticals for the broadcasters and new services for the people and the businesses in Jamaica. Quick summary. We're going to go over these things in a little bit of detail, but not much. There is the physical layer to discuss, which you guys learned a lot about with Gary's seminar. There's the transport layer, IP-based. There is the video, of course. The killer app on TV is indeed TV. And so better picture, better audio, all incredibly important. And the interactivity piece. The accessibility piece, new capabilities for visual and hearing impaired audience members, advanced emergency messaging, evolvability, meaning that we can develop this standard over time. We do not need to build it and then leave it alone for 20 years. We can build it and we can continue evolving it and making it better and better. One of the things that's most important about this slide is you'll notice a lot of technologies that you might recognize from other areas of data delivery systems, specifically IP, HTML5, CSS, and JavaScript. This is by design, by design, because we want ATSC 3.0 to be able to interoperate with other data delivery standards like the internet, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, 5G, LTE. So the idea is that we're selecting technologies that are easy to interoperate with other data delivery networks. Okay, physical layer. I am not going to spend much time on this. This is Gary's whole 2 days in a nutshell. I'm kidding, of course not. Just very briefly though, this is the slide that I want to show you, which I think is the most important one. So what you see, the blue line, is the theoretical limit of how strong your signal can be and how much data you can push through it. So with the signal strength being the x-axis and the data capacity being the y-axis, you'll notice that as your signal gets weaker, you can have more data, and as your signal gets stronger, you have less data. But actually, the most important thing on this is not the Shannon limit and how close all those red dots come, which represent ATSC 3.0. The most important thing on this slide is actually that little green dot right there, which is what ATSC 1.0 is, and Jamaica has opted to just leapfrog that. And the main difference that you see there is, number one, is that it's a single operating point. You don't get to choose how strong your signal is versus how much data you want to push through. You can choose your own business models and your own service desires. So with ATSC 3.0, you can operate at a very strong signal, reaching, for example, moving devices in cars, or you can operate at a less strong signal but deliver multiple 4K signals to, for example, a rooftop antenna. And you can do that at the same time. You do not need to choose, you can do both at the same time. Whereas with ATSC 1.0 and with analog, you choose, you just get your one operating point and everybody does the same thing. The other thing you'll notice that's really important is to notice the delta here between ATSC 1.0 and where 3.0 lies at the same signal to noise ratio. There's about a 30% boost in the capacity of ATSC 3.0 over 1.0 right off the bat. And then when you add the new video codecs, you can do so much more with ATSC 3.0 than you can with 1.0. So I applaud you for making the choice to skip ATSC 1.0. Good job. Okay. A little bit about the transport layer. Again, we're going to get into that. We've got Dr. Young-Kwan Lim over here who's going to help describe that. We also have Gary and Adam who are going to describe the physical layer in just a little bit more detail. No, not another day and a half. So the ATSC 3.0 transport layer, the most important thing about this is that it is an IP-based system. This is another world first. This is the world's first television broadcasting system that is based on the Internet Protocol. And that, again, was one of the key drivers behind envisioning ATSC 3.0 as a system that doesn't live in a silo of television broadcasting. It lives in an ecosystem of data delivery networks that are out there already, the cellular system, the Bluetooth system, et cetera. So the other thing that it does for us is it helps us with hybrid services. So for those on the island that have an internet connection, no, you do not need an internet connection in order to receive ATSC 3.0, you don't. But if you have one, now you can sort of deliver hybrid services. Imagine that you have multiple languages you want to deliver, and you're going to deliver the main language and maybe one secondary language over the air, and you can deliver several other languages over the internet. And those that have an internet connection could select from among those other languages, and they get combined at the television set. So there's a lot of hybrid ideas about how you can combine these two networks to work together. And this was the hybrid delivery slide, which I should have clicked to earlier. Anyway, we don't need to dwell on that, do we? Video. Again, we're going to have people here talking with you about video. We have Alan Stein, who will be here to talk about that in more detail. But the main thing is the significant efficiency improvement with HEVC video codec. That is going to allow you to deliver a lot more content. So imagine, I think that one broadcaster, and maybe Niam, who's in the audience as well, can correct me, but I think one broadcaster said that what they're doing with ATSC 1.0, they can do in roughly 10% of the bandwidth with 3.0 because of the physical layer improvements and because of the encoding improvements. Also, you can get to 4K, wide color gamut, which looks amazing, high dynamic range, and high frame rate, as well as spatial scalability. And with the audio system, we can have surround sound, enhanced surround sound, and it works on all kinds of devices, regular TV sets, sound bars, headphones. It's amazing. I don't know if you've ever heard immersive audio in headphones on a demonstration, but it really works. It's coming from all around you, and you think, how can this possibly work with two cans on my ears? But we only have two ears, right? So it's possible, as long as you design the sound right. So anyway, the audio is incredible sounding, and it is personalizable. As I mentioned, you can choose different languages, commentary, addressing hearing impairments, normalizing the sound of loudness of content, and contouring the dynamic range to each user and device environment. And just a quick demonstration here. One of the things that's interesting about the audio is that the music and effects can be delivered separately from the dialogue. And so we can send the music and effects one time, and then we can send multiple different dialogue tracks, and the viewer can choose which one they want to hear. And what that does is it allows us to, again, get more bandwidth back. So 4 complete presentations at roughly 384 kilobits per second is possible with this system. Interactivity, again, some of the familiar words, HTML5, Dash, JavaScript, CSS, and we have, again, talented people in the house to give you a deeper dive on how the interactive system works. But the idea is, if you're a broadcaster and you have web properties, then you have the staff in-house who can design and build these apps. And we also have, of course, solution providers like Guyan Solutions who can help you with ready-made solutions to get the interactivity up on the screen, which I think the viewers will really enjoy. And one thing that I want to say about the interactivity, if you don't have your engineers design the interactive experience, okay? Because we write hello world on the screen and we think it's cool, right? You want to get your content producers involved in this piece as early as possible. How would they design the user experience? That's what's important for this. Accessibility, as I mentioned, very, very important. It uses IMSC1. Here's another one where we are sort of joined at the hip with the web. IMSC1 is sort of the safe harbor caption system for the World Wide Web. Multiple language tracks of captions are also possible. Video descriptive services, where you insert the audio narrated descriptions of television program in between dialogue, and the dialogue enhancement, which was interesting when we did consumer testing, not we, but those in the ATSC community did. And the idea of being able to turn up the dialogue relative to the music and effects tested very high among consumers. Apparently, a lot of people turn on the closed captions, even though they don't consider themselves to be hard of hearing. I do that when it's like Scottish. I can't understand anything they're saying. And advanced emergency messaging, also very important. We have Niam and we have Ed Zarnicki here who are going to give you a deep dive into the emergency messaging system and how it works and what you can do with it. But the idea is that there can be prompts and you can dive deeper in as a consumer. You can make your choices about which messages you want to see. You can geo-target so that these people don't see what those people need to see. Etc. So, user preferences of languages, all kinds of different things you can do with this system. So again, not stealing anybody's thunder. All this will go into detail. Mentioned a little bit about the deployments. So Jamaica is the first in the world to go from analog to digital, ATSC 3.0. But we have some people that have paved a little bit of trail for you, not the analog to 3.0 piece, but at least some of the 3.0 stuff. As I mentioned, South Korea on the air since 2017. Their killer use case, UHD. Their government said, by God, we want UHD 4K on the air in time for the 2018 Pyeongchang Olympics. And similar to the way Jamaica has risen to the challenge that the government presented, Korea did as well. And those signals were on the air by the time the 2018 Olympics. Furthermore, they had a mobile signal on the air that early. They had the bus that was running from the Olympic Village to the hockey arena, which is actually a fair distance, driving at highway speeds with only one transmitter, not a single frequency network, and receiving all of the Olympic coverage on the bus going between venues. So they've been at it for a while. US was up next. All of the orange areas are ones that have 3.0 signals on the air. Light blue ones are ones that they're getting ready, a couple of weeks away. Dark blue ones are ones that have also announced. The gray ones, we're working on it. Okay, it's a voluntary transmission, right? Okay, should get to 85% by this year. Jamaica, this is already outdated. Am I right? Yes, this is outdated. This only represents the first transmitter that came online in January. It doesn't represent the one that came online, what, yesterday? Yesterday. Sunday. So, yes. So congratulations for that. This is an amazing feat. And for those of you who haven't seen it, please do check out the television at the exhibits around the room, which has the live over-the-air signal. So congratulations, Television Jamaica, for being the first, and congratulations to all the broadcasters for what you have done already. Well done. Devices. So we're going to spend some time on devices because I think that this is a major, major issue in all countries, in Jamaica as well as in the US, where we need to think about how can we get devices in consumers' hands so that we can turn off our old signals. It's particularly important in the US because we're sharing channels between 1.0 and 3.0, so we don't even get to use all of our bandwidth for 3.0 until enough consumers have devices that we can actually shut off 1.0. So we're only using a fraction of our spectrum for 3.0 right now in the US. You guys are lucky you have your own spectrum to do it with, but you still cannot get that analog spectrum back for other purposes until everybody has a device. So this is some data from the Consumer Technology Association in the US, and it is talking about shipments of television sets, not any other kind of devices, in the US that have next-gen TV capabilities. And you'll notice that by 2024, they're expecting this inflection point, and by 2025, they would consider the deployment to be mature. But meantime, so these are coming from LG, Samsung, and Sony. And in fact, we have a representative from LG here in the front, Skip Peasy, from Samsung, and also from Sony, all of whom will be talking with you soon. And the models are ranging right now from $599. Can you buy a Samsung for $100,000, Young? That's US dollars, just saying. He's laughing. Maybe not. And also Hisense has joined in with those three manufacturers. They announced that in CES 2022. But the other piece is that set-top box dongles and other kinds of appliances are coming. There are a number of them in this room. There is the Mobius device over here. There's a Zapper box over here. There's a Zingwell box. And if I've forgotten any, please forgive me. But they're coming. And in the US anyways, these costs range from $60 to $300. Again, $60 might seem like a large number for what might be needed here. And I gotta tell you, in the US, it's a large number for what might be needed ultimately to get everybody off of ATSC 1.0. But what's cool about this is in the US, we've only been at it for 2 years during a pandemic, right? So that's pretty fast to be matriculating this technology in a voluntary fashion, marketplace-driven, getting to this point already. So I'm actually quite excited about that. And the set-top boxes that you see around the room will be hitting the marketplace. Mine's on order. Yes, coming. And why not a smartphone, right? You can put an ATSC 3.0 antenna in a smartphone. This is a prototype. This was built by the One Media and Sankhya Labs. We have a representative from Sinclair One Media in Neum who can talk about the phone if you want to make contact with her. It's not meant to be a consumer. They're not going to productize this. This is really a reference device to show that it can be done. And it can. And this was actually demonstrated at a major event in India just in June this year. What else? You know, smart agriculture, cars, firmware updates. You know, I heard that sometimes people's kitchen appliances are now connected to the internet. I don't know. I hope I don't have any connected devices in my kitchen because I don't want them to hear what I'm talking about. But right now, automotive is actually the most common use case for data services that's being discussed. And we'll see how that unfolds. So again, a little bit about India. As I mentioned, they're interested in direct to mobile as well as broadcast traffic offload. We have Mark Corral in the house who will talk about what the ATSC India implementation team has been doing and how their work has led up to some of these important developments in Delhi. And we have the Brazil TV 3.0 project. Again, we have people here who are wearing multiple hats. Our LG representative here, Skip Peasy, is also the chair of the Brazil implementation team, which is helping organize ATSC members' efforts in making sure the Brazilians get the full test of ATSC 3.0. They are doing what we call in standards development organizations an old-fashioned bake-off. In other words, they're testing all these different technologies, and whichever one is the best is the one that they're probably going to recommend. So they're already making some of their decisions, and they're going to be finishing up in 2024. And there's more interest. So Canada, I think they're going to be issuing experimental licenses in the coming months. Mexico, everybody has their own use case that they're most interested in. Distance education is top of the line in Mexico. Honduras is coming around along with other Central American, El Salvador, Panama have all expressed interest in ATSC 3.0. And my understanding is that there are other Caribbean nations that are watching what you do very carefully. And they're very interested to see how you make this work and how it works for the Jamaican people and whether or not it's appropriate for their cultures as well. Another piece, though, about interest across the globe is the ITUR. Talk about a standards development body. Boy, that's a big Byzantine, complicated one, but we have Aldo Cugnini in the house who is an expert on what's going on in the ITUR, which is opening up the doors for many, many countries in the world to look at ATSC 3.0. So with that, I hope that you have kind of the quick tour de force of as many things of ATSC 3.0 as I can cram into a half an hour. And I'd like to now turn over the podium to Raymond is physical there next, yes? Yes. So now I'd like to turn the podium over to Adam Goldberg, who will give you a technical overview of the physical layer, not as deep again as what Gary. And Gary is here actually not to talk so much about the technology, but about how you actually get this done in the field. What you'll notice is that in the program, there are a lot of sessions that have 2 people. And it was Cordell's idea, thank you for that, which suggested that we have a tag team. So the session will be a tag team. First of all, a little bit about the technology. How does this thing work? And then another person who says, I've actually done this, and this is how we did it. And these are the challenges we faced and how we overcame those challenges. And one of the most important things I want you all to do is take note, take pictures of the faces that are on the screen. Make sure you get business cards, because all of these people are experts on these areas, and they want nothing more than to share knowledge. So if there's any particular topic that you want to dig deeper into, remember the faces, snag them at dinner. I don't care if they haven't got a drink in their hand yet, you can still snag them and ask them your question. And like I said earlier, I truly hope that we are establishing long-lasting relationships with each other, that we can rely on each other for many, many years to come. So with that, I'd like to kick off the first real session, which is on the physical layer with Adam and Gary.
Marijuana leaf, really? Huh. Okay, cool. Well, while I'm waiting for the, oh, there's my slides. It's very hot here. I don't understand. There are people wearing jackets. What is, I don't understand. It just, I don't get it. I'm not sure I packed any pants. Thank you. I was looking at bathing suit, shorts. Well, hi. My name is Adam Goldberg. I am, among other things, the co-chair, vice chair, I don't remember, of S33, which is the mid-layer protocols, and I also chair the S36, the security aspects of ATSC 3.0. My colleague, who is Luke Fay, has been very involved in the development of the PHY layer, but he couldn't be here, so hi. And it's really weird, I think, to follow Gary. Gary's got, years of experience teaching this course and a day and a half to do it, and I have a couple of slides. So hopefully this is helpful to you. Which was the up button? Green. That one. There we go. Okay, so I want to talk about a couple of things that may likely overlap quite a bit with what features Gary was describing earlier or yesterday, but maybe put it into a little more realistic frame. And then including a couple of slides about some cautions about how to set things up, and some features that are perhaps particularly well suited to Jamaica and working around in mountains in the middle, right? So if you were paying attention, probably in the first 20 seconds of Gary's presentation yesterday, I imagine he covered all of this right up front. What we build the system on is IP packets, as everyone has talked about. It gets split up into ALP, an ALP layer, which is sort of a different way to packetize things, and then fed into the physical layer for broadcast. So of particular note are the standards which have moved around here. So ALP is 330. The PHY layer is in the A32X series. It depends, and then the upper layers up here are in some other layers that we'll talk about later. What I'm going to talk about is the pieces of this, really. So this is at least the second time you've seen this drawing. I think one of the things that's important to point out, and I know that Madeline already did this, is that where ATSC 1 had exactly one point, 3.0 lets you choose along this line of trade-offs between robustness and data rate, so that you can do things like set up part of your signal with a lower data rate and a much more robust transmission signal. So that can be useful for things like handheld devices or cars, mobile devices that are moving at some speed, where the better robustness, easier ability to receive the signal is more important than squeezing every last bit you possibly could out of it. It's also probably worth noting, and I'm just going to take a half a step over the line of what I really know about, is way up here, really, really high data rates may not really be achievable very well over the air. In very small areas and test situations, and some, maybe cabled systems carrying 3.0. But as you ride down the curve here, you get to broader areas of coverage, albeit with less data. And so one of the things that you all, as Jamaican broadcasters and engineers, need to do is figure out how to split this up, and whether there's a demand for the additional robustness of a more mobile setup, like would be down here, or whether that's more important to do higher bandwidth things when you have good coverage and there's tools available to increase the coverage than what you might have with a single transmitter on top of a mountain. But I'll talk about that in a minute. What's important to know, though, is that you can chop your signal up into many pieces, where you could have a mobile service and a stationary service both simultaneously in the air, and you're just it's how do you want to spend the spectrum. Let's see. Oh, I have a monitor here. High capacity low. I did all this. Okay, so the next piece, in addition to the fact that what we have today is, we think, the most efficient broadcast technology available today for this application, one of the very important pieces that we put into the system was both to do different portions of the signal in different robustness and signal carriage rates. But in addition to that, let's see where we go here. Oh my goodness, he's got these. I apologize. There's our slides with. Oh, look at that! Isn't that fancy? Okay, so it's not my slides, right? So the way the signaling hierarchy works for the different PLPs with different coding rates is that there's so some initial signaling that points at the several pieces of the frame that have varying robustness characteristics. And that looks something like this if you make it less block diagrammy, where you have the bootstraps and signaling data, and then the big pile of 3.0 data, and then this bootstrap here tells the receiver or indicates where the next bootstrap is that signals another 3.0 frame. And what's this sort of black green box here, it's not black, for evolutionary stuff, is something that we thought was important from day one. Is we had been involved, many of us had been involved in the first definitions of ATSC 1.0, the use of the development and deployment of VSB, and paid attention to what was happening in Europe with DVB-T and other things. And where we got to was in a vein of future expandability and future proofing, was that, oops, can I do it again? There's absolutely built into the standard is the ability to do 3.0 this way, right? So this bootstrap and this data, and then this bootstrap and this data. But in addition, you could have other things. So if it turns out that Shannon was wrong and there's a much better RF coding possible, or something else happens, or some other features are needed that aren't directly addressed by the 3.0 PHY, that there's an opportunity to migrate to the next system without having to do what we had to do in the US, where you keep the 1.0 in place and add 3.0 and then move services from place to place and stuff in order to transition from 1.0 to 3.0. In the future, and hopefully we don't need to do this in the future, if we have ATSC 5.0, which uses an entirely different system for transmission, that can simultaneously exist on the same RF emission, the same broadcaster, the same broadcasts, and existing 3.0 receivers know how to skip that. So if there comes a time when we're transitioning to a different coding scheme, for example, there'll be no need to acquire additional frequency, to have additional frequencies or or more transmitters, et cetera. You can, just like you have the trade-off between data rate and robust reception, you similarly have a trade-off in how much of the signal you'd want to dedicate to what would then be existing legacy 3.0 services and future services with whatever this turns out to be. And it's always nice to give an RF talk and have Gary in the audience going like this, right? So, okay, so I've got this right so far. A couple of cautions, though, and some of this comes from problems the receiver has. One of the features in the PHY is to use what's called layer division multiplexing, where you essentially pile one PLP on top of another. You add them together. And what's important, while there's great uses for this, and it's very important, what's also necessary is to keep in mind that if you're, I can't read that. If you're, nobody can read that. All right, so this one's easier. So this top one says PLP 0, and the lower ones are layered on top of that one. What's important to realize is that, we have a system with expectations that receivers are able to receive only 4 PLPs at one time. But if you say, for example, you needed to get to this PLP, if you need to get to this PLP that's built on top of this one, that's actually going to end up consuming 2 PLP processing pipelines in a receiver. So my caution on LDM is be careful how you're figuring out which services go where and what PLPs are necessary for what services, because you can, and this has happened, I think, you can get into a place where you're expecting to be able to use 4 different PLPs, but one of them you can't get to because you actually need 2 PLP processors to get to the piece that you need. Oh, Madeline, what did I get wrong? Gary's still nodding, so I'm good.
So I understand that receivers have only so many PLPs that they can deal with for a given service.
Right.
In the situation you're talking about, is that like, because I know you get 64 per RF
Yeah.
channel, but I think it's 4 per service. So are we using up one of our 4 or one of our 64?
So the 64, so one single broadcast can emit 64 different PLPs. And this shouldn't probably happen. That's a big number. But anyway, 64. And we have the expectation that receivers are able to receive at most 4 at one time. So if you have one broadcast using 4 and a different service using also 4, but a different 4, it's still only 4. What's important is that the receiver needs to be able to get all that it needs for the service to render in 4 PLPs or less, right? Okay. Let me see. So some of the other features that are, I think, useful and worth highlighting here, single frequency networks supported by the PHY layer, where you can expand your coverage using more but lower power and lower headache transmission systems. So if, for example, there was a city or a neighborhood or resort area, something that's blocked or has poor coverage for one reason or another, the transmission system enables the design of a transmission system so that all of those maybe shaded areas or similar can receive good coverage without having a 750 kilowatt transmitter on top of the mountain. And I expect that with you may have a real opportunity to use an SFN, to use SFNs here in Jamaica, where you have lots of coastal and as well as mountains, and that can cause difficulties in reception. It's also my understanding it's more efficient in terms of power consumption, and sort of size and impact of the transmission equipment and location. The other feature that's I'm not sure if it's a PHY feature really, but one of the things that we've done is have a system where you have adjoining broadcast or neighboring regions to be able to, like, for example, when you're traveling in a car, that when you pass from one broadcast area into another broadcast area, that the origin transmission can tell you and can tell the receiver information about what's coming up as it's traveling in a car or something, and can select an appropriate service in the new area where you can receive the new broadcaster. That may be more important in say flat or larger areas like the U.S., where each city will have a set of transmissions, and traveling intercity, you might need something like this, but it's certainly possible and perhaps useful for you. Bonded channels. So in the Shannon curve slide, where we talk about the robust reception versus data rate, it's also possible to sort of double or triple that by instead of using one 6 megahertz channel to broadcast the signal, use two, or in the future perhaps more, two different signals on two different frequencies, and bond them together so you end up with one higher capacity and/or higher robustness pipe. A little bit of caution though, while there are folks talking about this and it is supported in some hardware, it may not be supported in everything quite yet. And then I want to say almost finally, how am I doing on time? Just keep going. Okay. Stop. Okay, yeah. So we have done, we at Sony have done in partnership with a number of others, a handful of trials and tests about how we have found the actual reception hardware works in motion, and with a target towards automotive, things on the order of up to 100 or more kilometers an hour. You can receive that stuff very well, and the slide is here mostly to remind me to tell you that there are a couple of white papers that I can point you to on the website if if you'd like to read, maybe not Gary level of detail, but certainly more than mine. And then finally, and I apologize for the marketing slide a little bit, to show that the evolution of tuner products and tuner silicon and stuff is proceeding continues to proceed rather rapidly, and speaking for Sony, it's our belief that these the current reception chips are the sort of the world standard and are widely used by us, and as well as many of the other companies in the marketplace. So that's what I wanted to point out about Phi. Madeline, do you want me to take questions? Gary's got something to talk about, or? Okay. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Could I have my slides, please? My apologies for those of you who suffered through a day and a half, this past day and a half. I promise I will make this shorter, I think. Well, I'm going to talk about, what do you do when you've got your system up and running? You've decided what you're going to do with your business model. You're going to do fixed, or you can do pedestrian, handheld, mobile handheld, etc. What kind of reception are you expecting? Outdoor reception or attic reception versus indoor reception? And I've learned a lot about the situation here in Jamaica. Your houses have thick walls with metal in them. Hurricane proof, right? I never thought about that. That makes indoor reception really challenging, doesn't it? So now things have to come in. Usually, if you have a aluminum-sided house, some houses are like that in the US, it comes in through the windows and the roof. Well, if your roof has metal in it, now it's just the windows. So you put the antenna near the window. What do you do if you're on the wrong side of the house and the signals come in the other way? That's where SFNs can help. So keep that in mind. Your business model may be UHD, maybe HD, SD, scalable video, data casting, whatever. Now, there's not a one size fits all. Each market can have different, slightly different terrain here. You can have considerations for the buildings and so forth, but you really want to optimize the efficiency. So you have to know what the terrain is. You have to know what the shaded areas are. You have to know the population centers with the large buildings. And then you need to know what is typically the longest delay echo, because you got to set something called a guard interval. Well, how do you know what that longest echo delay is? We talked a lot about that during the seminar. And the only way to do it really is to measure it in the field. So once you complete your system design, there you go. You have to decide how many PLPs do you want. Now, one PLP can handle many different services, so you only use different PLPs if you need different data rate versus robustness trade-off. Since you never get something for nothing, you've got to decide how that trade-off is going to work. All right? So data capacity versus signal robustness. So subframe parameters, FFT size, guard interval, pilot pattern. All those things need to be decided. SISO, basically your single stick versus your single frequency network. So how do you verify the system design? You go out and you have to do some measurement with the coverage and service. Now, people sometimes get those mixed up. Coverage is signal strength. Service is receivability. You say, well, if you have enough coverage, signal level, you should have service. And in theory, that's correct. But there are things such as severe multipath. There are things as interference from other signals, from naturally occurring events. So you want to check those as well. So the local terrain clutter, it's really hard to determine what that is based on simulation. So you really need to go out and measure it. So field testing is the next step. So you're going to come up with a test plan. Well, what do I want to prove? You certainly want to verify your business model, obviously, and you come up with some kind of test vehicle, whether it's the equivalent of, in the US, we use a lot of the old E&G vans, put an antenna on there. You have to have a feed line down into the truck, a robust preamplifier with multiple outputs. So you can feed a spectrum analyzer, for instance, and one or more test receivers. One of those test receivers should be something that will give you the constellation, the SNR, MER measurement, all those fancy measurements that you'd want to make, channel, impulse, response. And that's not a regular TV set. That's a piece of test equipment. But you may also want to take out a receiver with you. Now, depending on the size of your vehicle, you say, well, I'm really not going to take out a big flat screen TV. So you take out either a small TV with the same type of chipset in it, or you take out a set-top box or a USB dongle with a computer, etc. But you make it work, so you're really testing the chipset, etc., in terms of the performance. So if you're doing fixed outdoor or attic testing, you would say, I'm going to use a directional high gain antenna. That's the norm, right? Feed it inside it, so forth. Either you divide the signal up, split it, or use one of those new fancy home Wi-Fi gateways. That's good. Okay, what if you're doing fixed indoor or deep indoor? And it's challenging, as I said, here in Jamaica because of the construction. We have issues in the Southwest United States where they have the equivalent of the chicken wire with the plaster on it, and it too acts like a Faraday shield. Now, with the fixed indoor, you say, well, you run into the problem where the viewer actually will try to adjust the antenna, and many of them do not have a clue about the physics of how to do that. They're not all engineers. Nobody's perfect, obviously, so they have to deal with that. You also have the fact that there are antennas, and then there are lousy antennas, all right? You have indoor antennas that have amplifiers in them for, I can't think of a good reason to use an amplified indoor antenna. We came across many of them, first of all, that were lousy and overloaded easily and so forth. And the second thing is, if you put a preamplifier at the output of an outdoor antenna, that makes sense because you're trying to compensate for the loss of the downlink cable and splitters and things like that. Why do that for an indoor antenna, which has maybe a 5-6 foot cable? So you say, what else can I measure? Pedestrian and handheld, non-directional, low gain antenna, because it's a small device, battery operated, mobile vehicle. There's mobile and there's mobile handheld. And I split the two up because mobile, the difference is while you're moving in a vehicle, there's a difference between the outdoor type of antenna on top of the roof. It doesn't have to be a car, it could be a bus, it could be a train, etc. Or you could have a handheld device, as I keep moving, there we go. And that's the most difficult because now you have the lousy antenna inside, it's internal, and you're in a moving car. So what test you do depends on what your business model is. So let's say you're doing a fixed test and you say, I want to be statistically relevant or statistically meaningful. So you do 100, 200 test sites, etc. And you want to cover the entire region of interest. But you're not going to do 1,000 sites. So the sites you pick will affect the outcome, just like you can do polling of people and you could skew the results based on how you ask the question. Well, same thing here. You can skew the results based on how you pick the test sites. So for instance, you could pick them on radios where the constant antenna pattern of the transmitter is fixed and you vary the distance and of course the terrain. You have things called arcs that you can draw on a map, and those are constant distance, but you're varying the transmit antenna, and of course you've got terrain differences. You've got grids and clusters where you go to urban or suburban or even rural areas, and you put them maybe only a mile apart in some kind of grid. And then you've got special cases, cable head ends, executives' homes, et cetera, like that, who you want to show that you're making progress and that the system actually works. Most of the tests that are run are location variability tests. I mean, let's face it, you're not going to stay at one site for an entire day and do diurnal testing, sunset, sunrise, et cetera. But you got to do enough tests in order to get that statistical relevancy. So, would you do an entire test with the process of doing data analysis and publishing a paper and then do that without testing your equipment? You'd be risking wasting a lot of time, energy, and money. So you want to test functionality, make sure the video and audio works. And the reason you would need video and audio if one of your test receivers is a consumer device that does not have a nice screen telling you all the engineering parameters, okay? You'd want to check and make sure that the RF mod cards that you're using for the test actually work properly. Whether it's the transmit side or the receive side, the whole system must work. You don't want to get out to the first site 60 miles away, or in this case, maybe 20, 30 miles away, and find out it doesn't work. So you want to check your ERP like normal, forward, reverse power, things like that. You want to check, is the in-band signal quality proper? In other words, you want to make sure you're putting out a good signal with low stop band emissions, because you don't want to, during this test, interfere with anybody else next door to you. And in the receiver, you'd want to really calibrate the receiver that's in the truck, but you also want to calibrate the truck so you could actually determine what is the field strength at any given point. You certainly can compare that against simulations, computer simulations, the truck system gain, the receiver performance, like dynamic range. Make sure it's working properly, thresholds, multipath performance, etc. So, not saying you're going to have an ENG truck like we do, but you have to have a block diagram, and I'm not going to go through this in detail, but you can see partway down in the field strength calculation. So you measure on the spectrum analyzer of power, and then you just calculate back what is the actual field strength. And there looks like there's, in the lower left-hand corner, a lot of equipment, but some of that's superfluous. You just need what's in the blocks there. And again, I would encourage you to consider, besides a piece of test equipment as a receiver, is using one or two other receivers to compare. This antenna on top, in the top left, and the top right, it's mounted on the truck, is the digitanna. It's only 22 inches long, 33 inches wide, and it's very light. Okay, and we use this for testing because it's got a decent gain and so forth. You say, why isn't it larger? And that's because this is only high V and UHF. Well, if you're only doing UHF, it's even easier. You don't need a super big antenna. Now, if you're doing mobile, you might consider omnidirectional antenna like we used. This is either the one we used in Dallas with St. Clair or the one we used in Phoenix with Pearl. It's one of the two. We use the same one. So you can get these type of antennas and then do your test. So how are you going to analyze the data? Well, you want to know, what is the field strength across the area? Does it seem reasonable? Is it what you expected? Service, air-free. Now, we like to do at least 3 consecutive 30-second intervals to make sure that the signal is not going to vary during that time significantly, because if it does, then we should say the site really failed. That's unacceptable. You also want to know how close to the cliff you are. The cliff effect can be good or bad, depending on which side of the cliff you're on. But you don't want to operate just on the good side of the cliff, so close that you're dangerously close due to variation. If you want to study or evaluate the system in the field, what you'd want to do really is start attenuating the signal down until it gets to the noise floor of the truck, not the receiver, because you've got a preamplifier in there. And the bottom line is, now you know how much wiggle room you have at every given site, because if the margin is so close, you're in danger of not fulfilling your goals. You also need to know the longest echo delay, as I said, and the only way to do that really accurately is to measure it at each and every site. Well, there's where a piece of test equipment comes in handy, where you could see they call it the CIR, channel impulse response, and that tells you how long the various echoes are. Whether those echoes are due to naturally occurring events, bouncing off mountains and so forth, or whether they're due to synchronized transmitters. In other words, an SFN. Are you going to have any interfering signals anywhere? And if so, what is the DDU ratio? So you'd want to measure that. And finally, it's really important to know when something fails, why it failed. And sometimes it's hard to tell, but the engineer's got all the data. Sometimes it's obvious. Sometimes the engineer has to make some estimates on why it's failing. For instance, if you're worried about interference, sometimes you'll then temporarily put in a channel bandpass filter and get rid of most of the other interfering signals, and all of a sudden it starts working. Now you've got a clue it was interference. If it makes no difference, then you say, oh, it's something else in terms of adjacent channel. So the data analysis, you want to check the median field strength, the raw service percentage, how well did it work throughout the entire region? System performance index, we only use that during new systems. We use that for ATSC1 when it was relatively new to prove the system. Whether you do that here or not, or accept our data is up to you. But the difference is if you are below threshold for any given PLP, you shouldn't expect it to work. Okay, so you shouldn't count that against the system. That's just what it is at that given site. You want to know what the median margin is by all the sites, and of course, if there's any interference. But the echo delay is going to be the important thing. And you could do all this with and without any SFNs on. If you're doing SFNs, I would encourage you to consider doing that. You'd want to know, without the SFNs, here's my analysis. Here are the results. With SFNs, it should get better. Certainly shouldn't get worse. The thing is, will it stay the same or will it get better? This is, for those of you who have been to the seminar, I'm borrowing some slides here. You have different means of echoes. Come on. There we go. You have discrete or scattered. They could come from different angles off of different objects, add constructively or destructively. They could be stationary or dynamic. They could be fading, flat fading, or have the spectral ripples and so forth. Believe it or not, this is one of my slides from about 25 years ago when we were doing ATSC1 seminars, and never thought I'd be using them again, but here we go. No echo. And you have the white polar bear with a positive ghost being followed by another white bear, his delayed image. On the left, you can see the horizontal sync bar. You go to the next one, and it's a quadrature ghost, and because it's a vestigial sideband signal, the quadrature ghost 90 degrees will look kind of differentiated, and you can see the peaking on the edges. And then there's the negative ghost. Now, one of the advantages is you'll never see this on a digital signal. This is purely analog that you see the actual delayed image. But I also show this is if you wanted to get a head start before you get on the air and with digital, you could actually go out and make these measurements with an analog signal that's possible because you've got analog NTSC that you could feed into one of your UHF transmitters. And then you can measure the delays in inches, and you know what the full scan rate is, et cetera, and you would end up knowing roughly what your echo delay is and give you some idea how to design. Otherwise, how long do you make the guard interval? You're taking a guess. You say, well, just make it extra long. Now you're not being very efficient. If you got a lot of bits to waste, okay, but if you want to optimize it, you need to know the delay. So if you have a single frequency network, instead of a single stick, the single frequency network may fill in the holes in the coverage. Again, coverage is signal strength. If you have multiple transmitters, you can't go interfere outside your a DMA and so forth. So you'd want to put those extra synchronized transmitters, for instance, towards the outside and point them in this case. Now, if you're trying to get over hills, then you have a different design, but you've got to be very careful when you do that. You can implement this with a full power single full power transmitter and then use multiple low or medium power synchronized transmitters. So if you want to use multiple frequencies synchronized SFNs, they have to have identical RF signals, okay, and you've got to be frequency locked to do that. That will allow you to actually add capacity because now you don't have to have as high a signal to noise or as low a signal to noise ratio because you've got greater signal getting into the areas that used to have blockage or getting into the homes that prior to that you could not get into. And this is all made possible by the OFDM and the fact that you have guard intervals. That guard interval, as many of you now know, will prevent ISI, intersymbol interference, but you still need to correct and equalize for the subcarriers that fall on top of one another. So there's a common mistake that because you're using OFDM and guard intervals, that if the delay is less than the guard interval, that no problem, it's going to work automatically. That is not true. You still need to do equalization, and that's an important thing to remember. So you need to concern yourself with the other parameters, if you will, that will help prevent echoes, static or dynamic echoes, from causing problems. So most designs of SFN are what many people in the States call opportunistic designs. What that means is use existing towers and lease space on it. And say, well, it may not be optimally located, but you may not have any other choice. And again, you got to be careful about infringing in adjacent markets and so forth. But you have to adjust and verify the emission timing because you want any man-made echoes from the single frequency networks to fall within the guard interval. So you do that by adjusting the emission times of all the transmitters just right. And how do you do that? Well, you have to have them all synchronized, and you have 10 megahertz GPS clock, 1 pulse per second, etc. And once you have the synchronization time and frequency, now you do your final adjustment. And the way you do the final adjustment is you use a transmitter ID, which is part of the ATSC3 standard, puts a special unique code underneath one of the preambles buried, and you bring that out with nice averaging and correlation, and you can get different signals there that show the channel impulse response. And the two main ones are the ones that you want to adjust the emission time so that they fall everywhere of interest in your region. They fall within the guard interval. So online measuring equipment, you got to use test equipment for this. So make sure you get your test equipment purchased as part of your planning. And it will show not only naturally occurring static echoes, but also the other SFNs, which look like echoes because everything is synchronized and locked. So in summary, you've got to consider your NTSC to ATSC3 transition plan. You have to consider the design of the system, single stick or SFN. How many PLPs do you want to use? And remember, a PLP could have many services. The only reason you have different PLPs is to have different robustness for certain types of data. Signaling data is extremely important. That should be robust, but you might want to put audio there, captioning for the deaf there in the most robust PLPs. And then the high data rate PLPs would be for your special data, HD or whatever you're doing. The field test plan to verify the service is extremely important. You need to educate your engineers. I appreciate every single one of you who came and was able to patiently make it through a day and a half. It was good discussion, good questions. I think that's great. But then there's the education of the viewer, and well, maybe you wouldn't be surprised, but there's amazing things that we saw in the US that the average person would do to receive a signal, including in the kitchen, putting the antenna behind a TV. The signal was now blocked, and the TV was radiating interference into the antenna, and they wondered why it couldn't work. And I told the story of I just put one up, it was on the fridge next to it, and it worked perfectly. And then you put it back down where his wife told him it had to be, and he wasn't watching TV in the kitchen. So you need to understand that the viewer needs to be educated, not just about scanning, that's important too, but how to receive over-the-air reception. Now, maybe you have an advantage because you still have a lot more over-the-air reception going on now, and the viewers understand how to do that. So with that, I did make it less time than the seminar took, so thank you.
Are in the market that is transitioning from NTSC to say NTSC 3.0. So what about somebody who wants to be like a new player and regional service provider coming in? They would have to meet all the tools and requirements that they were on screen. Or would they make an application to get a license to provide the service? They are not in the market yet, so they would not have the baseline.
They want to be
And the new player, right?
broadcaster,
Right.
But that's what the rules are in Jamaica. I'm not certain of. But you would have to still obey the rules that the government has set up and so forth for how much power you can create.
Yes, I understand that, but you're not getting it's some of the things that they would expect to have in terms of going out doing like all field testing and all of these things. That would be like, say, the start or the minimum requirement that they would have to come in order to enter. Am I understanding correctly?
It's a recommendation that they should do some evaluation so they know how to decide their formats. There's so many different options to pick for PLCs and subframe trackers, things like that. And so it depends upon your business model, what you want to do, how to decide the signal. But you still have the same problem that any other current broadcaster has. And that would be how you deal with the terrain, how you deal with getting indoor reception, et cetera. So the recommendation would be for you to do something.
So they would have, for example, first of all, say our planning prediction of and then based on that. Most of that prediction, then they would go into field and do their own optimization.
Like normal, you would do the simulation coverage, and then hopefully that predicts reasonably well the service. But you don't know that until you actually go and make those measurements so that you can verify that you can meet your performance for your business model. So that's what I would recommend, to give you the confidence before you spend a whole lot more time, energy, and money only to find out you can't meet your specific business plan. So I would encourage you, or anybody who's going to do this, to consider that. But you also have to consider what kind of test equipment you would use. And that's something that all broadcasters have to decide. That's why we've got all these.
But remember, you're talking about a need and play. Someone who's coming to the market. He has no practice.
Well, we gotta get educated first. Right? Well, feel free to come to my next seminar. You have to decide or hire somebody to do that for you, to do that planning, computer simulation, or you can do measurement, and you gotta tell what the business model is and what you want to do, and recommend different ways to try and solve the problem before you spend a whole lot more money going forward. I don't know what a decent amount of money is to you or to me or anyone else, but you have to spend something to do that, unless you have the equipment and the ability and knowledge yourself to do the simulation on the computer, or to do the field measurements and design the system on paper before you go out and bought a lot of equipment. That would be my recommendation. Are there any other questions?
Catch him in the hallway. I'm going to take just a couple minutes of your time. We are running just a tad bit behind. We had built in a break from 3:15 to 4. I would ask, before we do anything else, I want to give a special thank you to our exhibitors. We have Comark Communications. There's Jason and Ortis back there. I've got Aldrich from Enensys. Thompson Broadcast, Abby Alexander. I'm not sure if he's in the room, but he'll be back. I've got Ralph from Triveni Digital. Yes, Triveni Digital. And then I have, as you met, Ashwini and her colleague over here at Guyan. And then Mark from Spectra Rep is right there as well. And on page 4 of your program, there is a small little summary of what each exhibitor is showcasing today. As been noted in already, each one of them has solutions that you as broadcasters may be interested in. So we've built in some networking breaks. This is one of them. There will be more tomorrow and more on Thursday morning. But I am so appreciative of my exhibitors coming all this way. And I would hope that you would take just a couple minutes of your time over the next few days to visit them. There is refreshments. There's going to be some snacks to keep us energized and motivated for the next couple hours. And then I'm going to let you rest. And then we're going to come back and have some fun. And again, did I mention sparkling adult beverages at dinner? So thank you for your continued attention. Have a networking break. Thank you.
Victims of the system who divide and rule to break us down.